Can teenagers invest in stocks? Absolutely, but there are a few things to keep in mind, because in this video I'll tell you the best ways for a teen to really get started in stocks. And don't go anywhere, because I'm going to teach you all the rules that you should be following. All right, so number one, if you're a teenager, companies, including their brokerages, might require you to be 18 years old. Or as I like to say, it's PG rated, right? Parental guidance suggested. Because most of the time companies will say, hey, if you're not an adult, you shouldn't be making these kind of advanced type of trades. You'd be losing a lot of money. So you might have to do this with the guidance of an adult. You might have to have an adult account. Maybe the adult has to do the trading for you. But just understand that in many cases, you might have to be 18 to actually do this legitimately. However, there is a good thing you can start doing right now, no matter what your age. You could be 7 years old. If you get this, amazing. I would love to meet that 7-year-old. But you could actually start paper trading. Now, let me describe what paper trading really means. Back in the days, paper trading was you literally were writing on paper the stock price. In fact, I remember when I was in high school, we had a finance class, and in that finance class, and this is back in the 90s, like early to mid 90s, right? I remember the friend behind me, my classmate, he said, I'm gonna invest in Microsoft. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of that company. I was like, well, I'm gonna invest in Starbucks because that's up in Seattle. I was living in Portland, so Starbucks was starting to just get a little bit popular. Now, looking back, it would have been awesome if we both invested in those things back then, right? We would have made a lot of money. But we just started by looking at the newspaper. Literally, pull out the newspaper. There was no internet back in those days. Yes, there was days, it was after the Neanderthals and stuff that we didn't actually have the internet. But back in those days, we had newspapers. It even said the price was like 8 1/4 of a dollar or 8 3/8. It was always in eighths or quarters or halves. It was crazy. But we just started doing that on paper. We would say where we bought and then we would just track it day to day. Well, you can do the same thing now, but much more sophisticated because you do have the internet. You have made it to the 21st century and you can actually make what's almost like real trades. They'll even take out fake commissions and things like that when you're doing your trading fees and whatnot. So when you're doing that, you can actually see how much profit or losses you can make. If you want to become a professional at anything, you gotta practice. And it's not just practice, but practice it doing it right. That's why I recommend everybody, even adults, even if you're an adult watching this right now, everybody should start out paper trading, which you can do with most any brokerage account. They'll have a paper trading aspect. You can go and fake buy a stock or an option. If you're trying to do options trading, you can buy those things and then track it. You can buy and sell and see what you make. Right? So it's really cool. It's really awesome what you can do with that. Great way to practice, great way to kind of see if this is really for you. Because if you start freaking out paper trading, imagine what you would do with real money. You would absolutely panic, right? And so it's great to get to the point where you get so used to that practice, to those habits, that what ends up happening is you end up when you make real trades, it feels natural. Now, number 3 is, of course, keep learning. This kind of goes along with what I was just talking about there of keep practicing, but you want to keep learning. Learn from the best. Learn to see what other people are doing. Subscribe to different newsletters. There are people out there that have newsletters saying, hey, here's what to watch for. Watch for this in the market and do this and do that. There's different strategies you can do. Yes, you can buy stocks, but did you realize you can also short stocks? Which means that you can actually bet on stocks going down. You can actually make money if stocks lose money, if that makes sense, because you can actually sell a stock before you buy it on the end, assuming it works. So you can buy stocks, you can short stocks, there's options trading, there's covered calls, there's all kinds of strategies. You'll hear like condors and you name it, right? There's all kinds of birds that are involved there. But there's so many different strategies you can do. The real point is learn. Become a student, because as you become a student, it becomes easier. And here's a bonus tip, guys. If you're learning it, find a friend and teach it to them. See if you can describe it and teach it to them, because the best student is the one that teaches it as well. The student or the teacher always becomes the best student. So find ways to teach it to someone else, even if it's to your parents, just to kind of see if you reiterate and understand it yourself. Try it out. But again, practice, practice, practice. Do that. Now, eventually, of course, you're gonna get to the point you say, all right, I'm ready, let's do this, all right? I have money, what can I do now, right? My first advice to you is don't invest what you can't afford to lose, right? Do not invest, because the truth is, no matter how good of a trader you are in the stock market, you will always lose money. There will always be times that you will lose money. No one's 100%. If anybody ever tells you that they're 100%, they're either lying to you or they did 2 trades this year and then they stopped. When they were at 100%, they said, okay, I'm 100%. I actually know somebody who did that and she later got thrown into prison. Okay, so just know everybody loses money on certain trades in the stock market. It's just part of the business. So if you're gonna invest, don't invest anything you can't afford to lose. Let this be your extra play money. The money that you say, if I lose it all, it's not gonna bankrupt me. This is not your college fund money. Do not put your college fund in here, right? Or if you're not gonna go to college, don't put your entrepreneurial fund, your startup business in here, right? This is money to really have you play with. This is extra bonus money. So remember to start small and start with that. Now, I said, here's the number one thing to do. What are the rules you should follow? You gotta have rules. And these are actually rules I developed when I was a stock trader. I don't trade in the stock markets anymore. I've kind of got bored with it. I also don't like the risks as much because I can make more money in other places. But I used to teach people how to trade stocks and options. I was a stock coach. I taught people how to do that. And there were certain rules. In fact, that was the one thing, our first thing that we always taught people is, here are the rules and you need to follow these, okay? And I'll tell you, these rules are so important that you want to write these down if you haven't done so already. All right, so rule number one is don't lose money. Okay, that's Warren Buffett's number one rule. It's same here. Now you're gonna lose money regardless. So what you wanna do is cut your losses short, but let your profits run. Okay, cut your losses short, but let your profits run. What happens many times, the average person who's putting their money in mutual funds and in the stock market, most of them just ride the waves all the way down, ride them up, and they just keep riding. They just hold on and they're gripping it, white knuckling it the whole time, hoping that they make some money. They get excited, but then when it goes down, they freak out. Stock traders don't do that. Stock traders don't buy into emotions. They keep their emotions out of it. They say, hey, if this thing's going up, let's let it ride. But after a while, they'll say, hey, you know what? It's been going up maybe several weeks, several days in a row. I'm taking my money out now. And that's great. In fact, another little sub rule that I have as well is don't look back. You know, if you make money, be happy with it. Don't look back at the stock. If it keeps going up, don't freak out because you're like, oh, I could have made more money. If you made profit, that's good. But also, if the stock starts going down, don't ride it all the way down. Put in what's called a stop loss. A stop loss just says, if it hits this price, I'm out. Now, here's the thing you should really understand about rules, right? If you ever watched the movie The Pirates of the Caribbean, you remember Captain Barbossa, right? He's saying, they were talking about the pirate's code, and Elizabeth Swann was trying to quote to him the pirate's code. He's like, first of all, you're not a pirate. Secondly, pirate's code is not so much rules as there are guidelines, right? Guidelines and rules are not the same thing. Guidelines are like, yeah, most of the time, this is a good rule of thumb, right? That's not what we're talking about here. Rules are hard rules. You always obey them. They're like laws. You obey it, right? Those rules you got to follow. Same thing. If you have a stop loss, you follow it. You get out. You don't say, well, I could let it go down a little bit more, and then it keeps going down and you lose money. So that's a big thing there. Number 3 is never trade on a hot tip. This is why you ignore the news. You ignore Kramer, Mad Money. Do not follow his advice at all, right? Don't follow Kramer. Don't follow those guys. Don't trade on hot tips. You base it all on your analysis. You'll be learning things like fundamental analysis and technical analysis. I invite you to learn about those. I'm not gonna talk about that in this video, but those things working together can help you be able to follow those rules. But never trade on hot tips. Never trade. If someone says, hey, I heard this, don't buy into it. That's what amateurs do, and that's why normal people lose lots of money gambling, those kind of things. So anyways, guys, those are just a few of the rules. There's many, many more, but those are good rules to start with, and then you can create your own rules as you go along. Remember, those rules are hardcore, always things you're gonna follow. If you love this and you'd like to see how you can even make more money, check out this next video, how to make $5,000 a month in passive income.